Hello, I'm Victoria Gallagher from HipTalk.com. Today we're going to talk about some various different types of irrational thinking that can kind of impair your thought process. It can really create quite a lot of anxiety, depression, unhappiness if you fall into any of these 8 different types of irrational thought processes that I'm going to describe. So the first irrational thought process that I want to describe for you is called filtering. Now, what filtering does is it takes, let's just say that your boss was giving you some feedback about your work, and your boss was telling you all the great things that you do, and then he mentions one little critical thing that you do, and that is the thing that you focus on and that you hone in on, and you walk away from that conversation feeling pretty let down, pretty disappointed, pretty annoyed because you didn't really hear and take in all of the positive things that he was telling you, or she, if that's the case. You were only just you're filtering out everything else except for just the thing that sort of matches up with your ideas inside your head that your boss thinks that you're, not a good employee, or, and this could go for, any, maybe it's something that, your spouse is telling you, or your kids are telling you, or your friends are telling you, and you only hear the negative aspect of that. So in filtering, what we do is we awfulize the situation. We take in just the negative part of the experience to the exclusion of the positives that are there. So I encourage you to notice if you're doing that and begin to look at the entire equation and look at some of the positive things and take those in as well. So the next form of irrational self-talk is called polarized thinking. Polarized thinking is that it's either one way or another way. There is no in between. It's all or nothing. It's black or white. This kind of thinking can cause a lot of stress in your life because there just is no middle ground. And in a lot of cases in life, there is a middle ground. There is a happy medium. There is a point to meet in the middle. Just because, you're not able to complete the whole project, or just because you're not able to make everyone happy, or then, you just don't want to do anything. And, this all or nothing or black or white kind of thinking is responsible for a lot of our stress in our life. Generalizations. And generalizations is basically when you hear yourself using words like all, every, never, nothing, ever, things like that. You never take out the trash. You always do this or that. When you do that, first of all, it's not true. It's an irrational thought. But your mind hears that, and it does actually tend to believe what you say. What is important to do in this case, if you hear yourself using those words like all, every, never, nothing, always, these kinds of generalizations, just stop and ask yourself, is it always that way? Does he never offer to do the dishes? Those kinds of things. And when you catch yourself doing that, then it's important to use specifics. So if you're especially engaging in communication, these words can be very off-putting to another person. So if you're telling somebody that you never do this, but they do it maybe half the time they get it right, then give them credit for that half. Or even, if you're talking about yourself, I never ever, I never have any fun. Well, maybe, that's not exactly entirely true. If you start to get honest about the true situation, then you can begin to really work with what is. This kind of irrational self-talk is called mind reading. Mind reading, you're assuming that you already know how a person feels. You are assuming that you already know how they're going to respond, or you're assuming that you know what they think or what their past experiences are. And it's important to understand that we all have different perspectives on situations, and we all have our own unique way of thinking, feeling, and experiencing and seeing the world. Your mind reading, so projecting your own position, your own way that you might respond, or you're drawing from some kind of past response, and you're not really giving the situation a fair chance to be how it really is. So one way to overcome mind reading is simply to ask questions, to not assume that you know the answer, to not judge that the person is thinking this way or that way, or is going to react or feels this way, but simply ask honest and genuine questions about how that person thinks or feels. That's the only way you can really truly know what's going on with that person. Catastrophizing. When you catastrophize, you're basically taking an experience to the worst possible scenario. If somebody is 5 minutes late, then you automatically would, assume that they're not ever coming home. Or if the plane gets just a little bit jittery, you're automatically catastrophizing that, and we're going to crash. One way that you can take yourself out of catastrophizing is just to really look at the situation for what it is. This person is 5 minutes late. Don't read any more into that. I sneezed. Don't read any more into that. Just simply allow yourself to take a deep breath, relax. A lot of our stressful thinking also can come from our physiological tension that we are carrying around in our body, because our bodies and our minds are connected. So you can take yourself out of stressful thinking by physiologically doing something different with your body. So if you start to feel a little worried, if you start worrying about something and over dramatizing it and blowing it out of proportion, it's going to cause a lot of tension and stress in your body. So you can release that again by just simply taking in a deep breath, closing your eyes, imagining the best case scenario, and letting that go. Magnifying. And magnifying is similar in a way to catastrophizing. But this is actually taking a real situation, such as, say, I gained 5 pounds, and really just blowing that out of proportion and really magnifying that in that situation and making it so much worse than it is. It's basically taking a small obstacle and making that small obstacle so much worse than it is. Or taking something, maybe you're experiencing some kind of a little tweak in your body somewhere, say that you have a headache, and you turn that into, I'm having a migraine. And your body does listen to the words that you say. So when you are thinking some of these things and blowing things out of proportion, you are in a way hypnotizing yourself to have a worse experience than it actually is. So that's magnifying. Okay, the seventh type of irrational self-talk is personalization. And personalization really kind of involves a sort of judgmentalness that we have with other people. You'll tend to maybe measure yourself against other people. And this can never really prove to be beneficial for you, because you're constantly comparing yourself, say, that person's smart and I'm stupid. Or conversely, that person's not very good looking, so therefore I'm very good looking. When you do this, what you're doing is you're measuring your self-worth. And, on one day you're going to feel real good because you're able to find a lot of people that are measuring up less than you in your mind, and then another day you're going to find that you feel really bad because you're going to notice that on other days people are going to measure up more than your perception of how you see yourself. And this is really a recipe for low self-esteem and low self-worth. When you're constantly measuring yourself and comparing yourself to other people, this person's skinnier, prettier, smarter, has a better job, makes more money, drives a nicer car, has a better house, or on the other hand, you'll do it the other way around. And this is a constant kind of need for this like self-approval. But to get your self-approval by comparing yourself to other people really is not the most effective way to do that. Stop that kind of thinking, because it really doesn't make you feel very good. The final self-talk, irrational self-talk, that I want to talk about, and that's not the 8th one here, and that's your shoulds. And should is probably one of the most evil words in the dictionary, because almost in every case, again, you're setting up a scenario where somebody should do something, and when they don't do that, that makes you feel a certain way, because nobody can ever really live up to that standard that you have in your head of how people should be. And this is also true for yourself. There are things that you might feel that you should do or that you should not do. And so these shoulds and should not do's, basically they make whatever is happening that is not that way, which is 99% of the time, incorrect or wrong or bad. And so you're constantly in this mode of criticizing. When you're saying should, see if there's a way that you can kind of turn that around and just accept that this is what is happening. And that will help you to feel more peaceful in the present moment. So those were the 8 different types of irrational self-talk. There are others. These were 8 that I wanted to focus on for this video today. I hope that helps you to kind of get through your day and think in more rational ways that is going to help you to have a more positive life and a more positive approach with other people and a more positive experience in general. I'm Victoria Gallagher from HipTalk.com, hoping you have a stress-free day.